it's a totally rational position to say, for instance, that we absolutely needed the Rights Act, and we needed affirmative action, 30, 40 years ago, but now it's actually counterproductive, right? Like you could argue for that change. It's like there was a time for affirmative action, and that time has elapsed given the nature of society. Now, given that you need an explicitly racist policy selecting against Asians at Harvard in order to practice affirmative action for African Americans, this is becoming untenable and producing its own toxic effects, and we should figure out another solution. And there are other solutions. You could use economics as your variable, right? So you could say, well, we're not going to dumb down our standards for anyone. The standards are the standards, but we're going to proactively look for people who are below the poverty line who meet those standards, and at every decile above that, and we're just so if your family has never made a lot of money, you will have an advantage regardless the color of your skin, or as long as you're passing these tests, or whatever the criteria are in practicing affirmative action, and in following the left's identitarian politics. We are caring about race every bit as much as white supremacists care about race. I mean, the logical response to black and brown identity politics is white identity politics. And white identity politics is the most odious thing we have on the political landscape, right? Why would we want to give any energy to that? But it makes total sense in light of every other identity politics. So it's a war of tribes, right? So my view is that we have to get to a place where skin color is no more interesting to us than eye color or hair color, right? And that may seem a quixotic dream at this point, but it's clearly possible. I mean, many of us have accomplished that in our personal lives anyway, right? If you don't care about people's race, skin becomes like hair color, right? And so the question is, how do we get to a world where that is our basic attitude with respect to these sorts of variables? Like, again, no one has thought to ask how many blondes got into Harvard this year, right? And if we found that the number of blondes did not perfectly match the proportion of blondes in the general population, no one would allege that there's been a campaign against blondes, right? And there's this sinister animus against blondes that is we've just now statistically unveiled, right? And who do we fire, right? And what bureaucrats do we hire to make sure this doesn't happen next year, right? All of that would be such an awful capitulation to an ethical hallucination, right? I mean, it would be insane to manufacture that concern and then to do something on the basis of it. And yet that's where we're stuck with skin color, and that's where we're stuck with religion and a few other variables. And so it's although race is obviously the biggest in America.